Good morning, YouTube. It's 9 a.m. Like, literally, it's 9 a.m. and I'm actually shooting a video. It's at 9 p.m. It's not 2 a.m. No, this is actually the morning. And we're getting closer and closer. I just woke up. I lay in bed for a little bit, and I watched Lab Rats and Kicking It. Because I love watching the Disney Channel. And I was watching Disney XD because Disney Channel is showing the Disney Junior stuff right now, and I really don't watch that except for Sophia the First. So, wow, I really just put a bullseye on my head right by saying that. But it's alright. I enjoy all the shows on the Disney Channel and Disney XD. But, last night, like I said I would do this, and I'm going to stick to this. Last night was TNA Impact, and I want to cover the show, and once again, thanks to my non-friends at 411 Mania, I will be covering the show based upon the dialogue above my head. We did it previously, as usual, and the proposal that was seen at the end of Impact, setting up the big wedding between Bully Ray and Brooke Hogan tonight, well, last night on Impact. We started off with the wedding party was introduced, which ends up being Spike Dudley, Dreamer, and ending up being Taz. We started off the show with Jeff Hardy basically coming out, talking about his win at Genesis over Bobby Roode and Austin Aries. And of course, this led to Bad Influence coming out. Of course, my boy, one of my favorite wrestler on the face of planet Earth, the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian came to ringside and interrupted Jeff Hardy. This ended up being an attack, and of course Cowboy James Storm came out, made the save, and we set up a tag match. And this tag match opened the show, went back and forth, great way to open the show, a great 12-minute tag match, and Bad Influence ended up going with, we ended up going to the finish with Daniels hit the STO. And then James Storm came in, hit closing time. Storm came off with a splash, and both men go out to the floor. Frankie Kazarian hooks up, going for the finish. Hardy reverses, hits a devastating twist of fate, wins the match out of nowhere, just like Latino Man. Yeah, that's right, I made a Milk reference. That's what that's from. If anybody ever wonders why I bring up the word Latino Man when someone says out of nowhere, actually it is from the movie Milk. Diego Luna, wow, long day. Diego Luna is Latino Man, and that, of course, is said by Josh Brolin. A very homely-looking Josh Brolin. So, if you want to see a good movie, check out Milk. Excellent movie. But anyway, we get to that, and Jeff Hardy, of course, will not be making the UK tour. Well, I've heard mixed about him making it. He may make it, he may not make it because of his past convictions. So, he may make it to the UK tour, he may not. Which means the next 4 weeks of television, there's a possibility the World Heavyweight Champion will not be on it. What does this mean to me? 2 things. 1, the predictable injury angle, which I don't want to see. And I think they'll go with it. If they go with it, they go with it next week. But this should lead to what I've wanted all along, and I've been asking for all along, a TNA World Heavyweight title for the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels. I think Daniels wins the title, and here's why. Now, later in the show, we set up a potential program between Bobby Roode and Austin Aries against the TNA World Tag Team Champions, Chavo and Hernandez. So, with those 4 away from the world title picture, which that not puts Bobby Roode and Austin Aries out of the world title picture for the present time, and Bully Ray's got to deal with aces and eights, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Basically, this frees up Chris Daniels to win the World Heavyweight title next week on Impact. And you know what? If it happens, I can tell you I told you so, because I said a long time ago it was going to happen, and I think this may be the opportunity. Given it might be a transitional win, Daniels probably won't have the belt for a long time, and he'll probably drop it before the next TNA pay-per-view, which I believe is in March. Yeah, it's Lockdown. It's March 10th. Yeah, March 10th on Lockdown. So, we'll see Daniels losing at Lockdown, maybe back to Jeff Hardy in a cage. So, I mean, that's fine with me. I mean, Daniels will still have the belt on Impact. I'd like to make it to an Impact in September when Daniels has the belt, because I'd like to be there in attendance for Christopher Daniels as World Heavyweight Champion, because it's something I've been campaigning for forever and a day, ever since he first got to Total Nonstop Action. Now, we brought out Bruce Pritchard, Taz, and Al Snow, of course, to do the gut check segment, setting up from last week's singles match between Brian Cage and Jay Bradley, which was actually a pretty good match, and Cage pretty much had it until Bradley ended up hitting his clothesline, his boomstick lariat out of nowhere. So we ended up going to gut check, and right before gut check, Joseph Park ended up talking to the wedding party, thanking Bully Ray for pretty much getting him to talk to Hulk Hogan and bringing him into the roster of Impact Wrestling, and he gave him some illegal Cuban cigars, and Bully sent him on his way. So we went to gut check, and right away, Bruce Pritchard got on the mic and eliminated Brian Cage, basically making everybody agitated. So we pretty much had Bradley in the ring. Taz immediately said that Bruce Pritchard he pretty much thought on his own, and the answer was no. And then he kicked out, or he had a chance to kick out. He was talking about humping the highways, learning about discipline, and it brought in the Impact Zone. He basically talked about his boomstick trending on Twitter, which basically led to him saying he's knocking on the door, all I gotta do is let him in, he'll do the rest. We got Al Snow. Al Snow does end up saying yes, and then finally Bruce Pritchard says yes. So Jay Bradley joins the TNA Impact roster. Gonna be interesting to see what happens with him. Another heel on an already heel-heavy TNA roster. We need some more baby faces, people. We need to start turning people, because if not, we're going to have way too many heels and not enough baby faces, which is the complete opposite of the WWE right now. So, excuse me. We had a match between Kenny King and Christian York. These two had a tremendous match at Genesis that ended with York getting the upset roll-up victory, pinning Kenny King, pretty much reversing a La Mahi straw cradle, landing back on the shoulders and getting the pin. And after the match, Kenny King pretty much just snapped and laid out Christian York with a burning hammer. And we had this match here on Impact. And you know, the more I see of Kenny King versus Christian York in TNA, the happier I will be, because this will be a tremendous, tremendous feud between two superstars that can definitely go. And I think this is definitely going to be who goes after Rob Van Dam's X Division Championship next. And of course, we ended up going back to it. I mean, York ended up just showing some extreme fire, hitting Kawada kicks on Kenny King. For those of you that are not really wrestling fans, they're basically rapid fire, like front kicks right to the face, like taking the point of your toe and just driving it into the forehead of your opponent. Sometimes in the side of their face, just depends. I used to take a lot of those back in the day. But King set up for the burning hammer, of course, reversed. York ended up going for the burning hammer as well. King rolls him up, hooks the tights. We got a cheap victory. So this feud will continue, and that is awesome. Bully Ray, of course, confronts Sting backstage, basically tells him to talk to Hulk Hogan and basically convince him to walk his daughter down the aisle. And, of course, we'll see if that goes anywhere. They shook hands. Austin Aries and Bobby Roode proving to be as entertaining as always, basically talking about their different clothing tastes. That was interesting to see where we go with that. Hogan basically arrived at the Impact Zone and pretty much said the camera to get out of his face. Taz shows up at the wedding party, and they throw some back and forth. And they even mentioned Paul Heyman, too, basically asking about Paul coming in to join the wedding party like he was invited on Twitter. And, of course, Paul uses the line that the workers have heard so many times, Paul will call you back in 5 minutes. So, we ended up going back and forth. Sting came out, Hulk Hogan came out, and basically Hogan ended up saying with the finish of the promo was, I will do the right thing no matter what. So, we'll get with that. Gail Kim ended up talking to Taryn Terrell in the back, basically saying not to screw up the finish of her #1 contendership match with Velvet Sky, like she believes happened at Genesis, which of course crowned Velvet Sky as the winner of the gauntlet to determine the person who's going to be facing Tara for the Knockouts Championship somewhere down the road. Don't know if that's going to be an Impact or if that's going to be not until Lockdown, but it's going to happen. They ended up doing another #1 contenders match. This time, Gail Kim hit Eat Defeat, which ICP fans and fans of Juggalo Championship Wrestling will know as the Kurt Cobain that Kawabata hits. And, of course, right before the 3 count, Velvet put her foot on the bottom rope. This time, Tarantella did catch it, which is the same way that Gail Kim lost. And Gail Kim got agitated. We ended up going for In Your Face, which anybody that ever backyarded with me knows is either my Totally Awesome or my Dark Lotus, depending on what you want to call. And, of course, got the pin. So we will see Velvet Sky against Tara somewhere down the road for the Knockouts Championship, which is the only Knockouts Championship, the only women's title that actually matters in the Big Two right now. Now, ROH doesn't have a women's championship, and ROH's pretty much best performer, which is Sarah Del Rey, is now a trainer at FCW, working for the WWE. So, TNA has the best women's division, and WWE, with the leaving of Eve Torres and pretty much the fact that they're not pushing anyone, are in total shambles right now. So TNA does have the top women's division in the Big Two. I mean, obviously TNA is not Shimmer, but TNA is a good alternative if you'd like women's wrestling. And you know, in TNA, I don't fast forward through women's wrestling. I actually watch the matches because they're actually good, because there's a lot of good workers in TNA in the Knockouts division. So basically, we ended up going towards the wedding, and we're setting everything up. Bobby Roode and Austin Aries basically liked to overuse the word that they were objecting. They were basically objecting to the wedding, and they were objecting to the fact of what the talent is holding the title belts in TNA right now. And this, of course, brought out Chavo Guerrero and Hernandez to take exception to the rule, and they ended up doing a brawl. So we're leading, like I said, to a World Tag Team title match between Austin Aries and Bobby Roode against Chavo and Hernandez. I don't have a problem with that, because that frees up Bobby Roode and Austin Aries away from Jeff Hardy's World Heavyweight title, and that, of course, will allow Christopher Daniels to win the World Heavyweight Championship next week on Impact, like I've been predicting all along. So, I got no problems with this. No problems at all. I think they're basically showing that there can be the top heel tag team. And Daniels and Kazarian obviously are the top heel tag team, and probably the best act in professional wrestling right now as a tag team. But when it comes down to it, what you do is you put the title on Daniels, obviously. So Kaz will be happy for him. This is not going to be a jealousy issue. I think what you do then is you send Frankie Kazarian after the X Division Championship. So you basically would have Daniels with the world title, Frankie with the X Division title, and they have them go after the tag titles so they can hold every belt. I think that's a good idea, and I think that fits their heel mantra. I think Bad Influence would work really well holding all the gold in TNA, of course, except for the television title, because you can't really do anything with that. If you want to add another person to the group, you could, which would be a heel AJ Styles, but they're not going to go that direction right now. So I think Bad Influence is going to hold the gold. I think Daniels is going to be the next world champion. I think they send Frankie after the X Division title. And Frankie Kazarian against Rob Van Dam, sign me up. I want to see that. That'd be awesome. And of course, we'll have Kenny King and Christian York, and there is knocking on the door. So we've got a good X Division group again in TNA. Another must-watch group. Another must-watch segment of television. So we ended up doing the wedding, and everything was going swell. Everything was going great. And all of a sudden, right before I now pronounce you yada yada yada, Taz grabs the mic, and he pretty much asks Bully if he wants to do this or not. Now, the one funny thing that was really fantastic about this storyline, Bubba has always been very, very full of kayfabe, very, very full of protecting the business, regardless what you look at. And pretty much, unless you read dirt sheets, or you know the guy personally, or know some people that have worked with him, you don't know his real name. And he's using his real name in the storyline to try to prove how real it really is. So he's going by Mark, and Brooke called him Mark, and I thought it was like, oh, that's a slip up. They're not going to do it again. But they continuously do it again, and even Hulk Hogan called him Mark last time. So they're really, really pushing this wedding angle and really pushing the fact that it's real. Even Brooke went on a radio show on yesterday morning and pretty much said it was real. So we went there. Taz basically asked if he really want to do this. Bully Ray said, yeah, absolutely, definitely do. Told Brooke he freaking loves her, because that's how Bully Ray does. And Taz basically asks, is it hot in here? He takes off his tuxedo jacket, And to the absolute and utter shock of everyone in the Impact Zone and everybody watching on the internet and on television, he reveals his vest to be an Aces and Eights vest. So Taz joins Aces and Eights. The whole group just hits the ring. They mug Dreamer, they mug Bully Ray, they mug Spike Dudley, or you want to call him Brother Runt in TNA. And of course, Mickie James, Miss Tessmacher, and Chrissy Hemme, the bridesmaids, they of course powder. And basically Doc and Mike Knox, which has yet to be named in TNA, they're pretty much holding Brooke hostage, making her watch Hogan. And Sting, of course, is out at this point too. Hogan, Sting, and Bully Ray just get obliterated by Aces and Eights, all because Taz turned. And you know, here's the interesting thing. Now, everybody on the IWC was just lambasting this storyline. Everybody was saying, oh, this is stupid. Weddings and wrestling just don't work. And no, they don't. But what they do is they do set up storylines. And this is what they have done. They have set up Aces and Eights with a new member, and it's Taz. This may be somewhat of a reason why we've seen Todd Kennelly come in to work with Mike Tenay, because they were testing him out for a longer run. Now, here is two things I can see out of this. Number one, Taz can work the mic, so he could be a good mouthpiece for Aces and Eights. He's not the VP, I don't think. He's just a member. He's not the leader that I'm positive of. But here's a thing you're not thinking of. Of course, I don't believe Dreamer signed a contract. And I don't believe Matt Hyson signed a contract either. But they're looking at an ECW-esque pay-per-view for one of the taped pay-per-views that's coming up later this year that they're going to show instead of taping every month at the Impact Zone and doing 4 actual pay-per-views, 4 live pay-per-views on top of that. Why not? I don't know if Taz can still go. I don't think he can go at the level he did. And it's not a Jerry Lawler situation. Taz actually did not want to quit really either, but he grew into a role as a commentator, so he doesn't need to be a manager. So what I think we're leading towards for the ECW pay-per-view, and you could do this a lot of ways. I mean, we could do a 6-man, we could do an 8-man, but I think what we're leading towards for the ECW pay-per-view is Devon and Taz teaming up against Bully Ray and Dreamer. Now, if Dreamer, of course, isn't signed, I'm sure they could sign Matt Hyson to a contract and do Bully and Spike against Taz and Devon, which I think is a good idea, but I think Dreamer's the better fit, obviously, because there's a lot more background there. Now, granted, I know Spike teamed with Bubba the whole time. Well, they feuded, they teamed together in ECW, but I think that's the right direction to go. And maybe an ECW team and like an EV 3.0 this time around to face off against Aces and Eights in the main event of that pay-per-view. Now, I'm not liking the fact that there may be an ECW, non-ECW talent on a ECW pay-per-view, but if it works for the storyline, it'll work. And Taz's Aces and Eights actually creates a whole new whirlwind of questions exactly what this is going on. How long has he been there? What is his reasoning for being there? We don't know what's going on with Mr. Anderson. Don't know if he's Aces and Eights fully or not. There's a lot of questions to be answered, and there's a lot of masks still to come off. And there were a lot more people in Aces and Eights that had that attack last night that I've seen before. So probably a lot of new members. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the normalcy, Wes Briscoe, Garrett Bischoff, the ones behind the masks. I don't know who else was there. Could have been absolutely anyone. There could be anybody behind the masks. I knew Mike Knox and Luke Gallows were both behind the mask. They were talking about that. And we know Garrett Bischoff was behind the mask at one point. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly who is behind the masks when all of them get ripped off. And when the Aces and Eights actually flourish, and they already have, we've created a new part of the storyline. Once this finally ends and TNA gets the win and Aces and Eights get their comeuppance, I think there's room on the TNA roster for pretty much all of this talent. And like I said, I'm a big proponent of Doc, of Luke Gallows. I love his work, and I think he'd be a tremendous main event heel for the company. But that's Impact. And I don't drink the TNA Kool-Aid. I just enjoy good wrestling. And unlike at W. Patton, I don't care that Hulk Hogan's a part of the show because he's not really trying to get his past glories. Now, I've read the thing about Hogan trying to come back and he wants the TNA World title, but, you know, if that comes up, nostalgia pops. All right. So, good show. I love Genesis. Genesis was awesome. This was a great Impact to pair off with it. A whole lot better than the 20th anniversary of Raw. And if it wasn't for the fact of the Wade Barrett, Randy Orton match, and the Dolph Ziggler Super Cena match, TNA actually beats anything that was on Raw 20. So, kudos to you, Impact Wrestling, once again. And I look forward, hopefully, to coming back to the Impact Zone when I go back home in September to watch another broadcast, either whether it's live on Impact or it's one of the taped pay-per-views, which I'd love to be a part of. So, we'll see what happens with that. And we're running about 20 minutes now, and tomorrow is Plus and Minus. We're going to be going to the Animal Kingdom. I'm going to be talking about the new Wilderness Explorers experience that I got to play test in 2011, and I want to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about Avatar. I'm going to talk about the fact we don't, like that's mentioned in WW Today in the past, we don't have any water elements in an Animal Kingdom park. So the only thing really missing from this park is a water element, and we don't have one. I know we have Color River Rapids, but we don't have anything else. But I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to get some facts together, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. I have to figure that out, because we got a long movie day on Sunday, like I mentioned in yesterday's video. And once again, like I said, thank you for watching, and I will either see you in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening, or the wee hours of Sunday, depending on what time I get to shoot my Plus or Minus video, because this is going to be a long day tomorrow, because I got to work first, so there's always that. But I'm going to get off here. I'm going to have me some Special K. I'm going to get ready to head off to the mall in about 3 hours. So, until tomorrow, that's all I got to say about that.